Hello, people of St. Francis. Today is Friday, April 23rd, 2021. It's also a day when we commemorate what the church calls a lesser feast day, the feast of Toyohiko Kagawa. Toyohiko was a Christian pacifist and labor activist in Japan. He campaigned tirelessly for peace and was repeatedly arrested for labor activism, peace advocacy, and all sorts of things that the late great Congressman John Lewis would call good trouble. He advocated for women's suffrage, and his constant advocacy for the poor actually led him to live among them as one of them. He and our beloved St. Francis would have likely been good friends. His life's work was to foster solidarity with and healing for what Jesus called the least of these. So I love the gospel reading appointed for this lesser feast. And it's from the 22nd chapter of St. Luke. And it starts off, while he was speaking, suddenly a crowd came, and the one called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said to him, "Judas, is it with a kiss that you are betraying the Son of Man?" When those who were around him saw what was coming, they asked, "Lord, should we strike with the sword?" Then one of them struck the slave of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus said no more of this, and he touched his ear and healed him. You know, it's a story every Christian knows very well, the kiss of Judas, the betrayal of Christ. And as we know, the betrayal didn't come from some foreign land, from an evil agent whose cause was fomented by anti-Jesus rhetoric. It didn't come from the Gentiles or the pagans or the Samaritans. It came from one of Jesus' own people, from one of the members of the earliest thing we might recognize as a church. And if we read through the story arc of Judas, he never calls Jesus Lord. He calls him Rabbi, but he never really invests his belief and his life's work in following Jesus as either a prophet or as Lord. But he definitely seems interested in following Jesus as the Messiah. Just not in the way that we in Christianity use the word Messiah. You know, the Jews at the time, including the disciples themselves, thought that the Messiah would be a great military leader and show up and free the Jews from Roman rule. If anything, Judas was following Jesus not for the sake of devout religion, but of devout politics. Judas likely saw the path of Jesus as a path to social and political greatness, as a member of the cabinet of the head of the next big political thing in Jerusalem. We shouldn't be surprised that for 2,000 years, people with political aspirations like to ride the coattails of Jesus right into power. But in the midst of this betrayal, one of Jesus' followers, the Gospel of John tells us it was Simon Peter, leaps up and dutifully lops off the ear of the slave of the high priest. And Jesus' immediate reaction is to heal the slave and restore him to wholeness. Jesus heals the non-believer of the damage caused by the faithful believer who thought he was doing the right thing. You know, there's been a repeated theme in recent sermons at our church about how we are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus on earth, that our hands need to do the work of Christ. And while it is absolutely wonderful that we focus on feeding the poor and helping the homeless into homes or helping people avoid eviction and homelessness in the first place, and while I can't wait to be part of that effort, we as a universal church should really take heed to not miss out on the call to be Jesus' hands in healing the damage caused by his followers who didn't read the fine print. We have to face the difficult truth that the Christian church has, for countless years, been complicit in things like systemic racism and racial injustice, anti-LGBTQ legislation the oppression and marginalization of women, people of color, and people who simply don't fit into the very binary definition of belonging. And if we are Jesus' hands and feet on earth, then it is our job to actually respond to that like Jesus would, to heal it, to restore things to wholeness, not with words, but with action. People riding the coattails of religion into power always and without fail bring about this kind of pain and this kind of destruction. And Jesus, whether it was in person 2,000 years ago or next week in the person of you, is right there to put it straight, to restore it, to say, stop all this. If we are going to be the hands and feet of Jesus in the here and now, that means we're not just going to wind up getting some serious dirt under our nails, working justice for people when they're the victims of earthly powers and earthly power structures. It also means that we're going to get dirt under our nails, calluses on our hands, and cracked knuckles in doing restorative work and justice for people harmed by those who thought they were working for heavenly powers and heavenly power structures. It means a love so unconditional that we rebuild and restore the things our forebears had a hand in or turned a blind eye to, intentional or not. Sometimes people don't fix things not because they're evil or have bad intentions, but because fixing things is scary work, either because they fear change or they fear being cast out for challenging the status quo. But the net result is always the same. It means a love so unconditional that we recognize that often fixing the problem isn't enough, that we have to recognize the generational trauma that comes about when things like systemic racism, systemic homophobia, and sexism go unchecked for hundreds or even thousands of years. It means a love so unconditional that it doesn't matter if the people who benefit from the restoration are Christians or not, if they look like us or not, if their gender or sexual identity is ours or not. Jesus didn't have a checklist of qualifiers for people he showed love and grace and healing and restoration to. We can't either. It's great to be the Jesus in this, the healer, the restorer. But sometimes we have to come to terms with the fact that we're not being Jesus, we're being Simon Peter. I have been, so I know it's true. Sometimes we were the slave of the high priest, and we got mangled by Christians who thought that they were doing the right thing. And if we were, we're still likely here now, still steadfast in the faith, still showing up, still watching these, still going to church. We're still here because a person doing the work of God, doing the work of Jesus, showed up in our lives and said, that's not the way, this is the way, and helped us back up on our spiritual feet, fed us and clothed us spiritually, and helped us to find a truer way to live. And that's our calling now. Whether we're feeding the homeless, whether we're clothing the naked, no matter what we're doing, we restore, we rebuild, we fix the errors of the past to build a brighter future for our brothers and sisters in Christ and our brothers and sisters who do not know him. It doesn't matter who they are. So let's always strive to bring peace where there is strife, healing where there are wounds, and equity where there's imbalance. Or as we say at the end of every service at church every Sunday, what does the Lord require of us? To do justice and to love mercy and to walk humbly with our God. I'll see you on Sunday.